Welcome to Dungeon Master Talk. I am your co-host Kyle, and with me today, as always,
I am Shea. Kyle, how you doing, bro?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing, sir?
Doing pretty good, man. Hey, it's been a while since we've talked D&D, man. What the heck? What are we doing?
I mean, it's been like 10 minutes, but yeah, it's been a while.
I know, it's been 10 minutes. I mean, what are we doing here? Seriously.
That is fair. That's like a lifetime in role-playing games. You know how many characters died in that 10 minutes because we weren't helping them?
Oh, there goes another one.
Or correctly, we were helping the DM to slay.
Yeah, we just got done talking about TPKs, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
So now that we've given the DMs away to TPK, we should probably back them down just a little bit.
Yeah, let's go back to trying to have fun as Dungeon Masters.
No, we don't. No, I'm just kidding. We don't do that around here. Hey, guys, welcome to DMT this week. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for dropping whatever you were doing just to come listen to us. Actually, no, that's probably not true. But we just really appreciate you spending your time with us here. Kyle, what are we going to talk about this week?
Well, sir, today I think we should talk about non-magic characters and specifically how to keep it so they're having fun when they're seeing their magic-wielding brethren do crazy things like make water float into the air and unlock doors with a word. So next to that, how do you make the characters that don't wield magic feel just as important and have just as much fun outside of combat?
Oh, that's a really good one. I hadn't really thought about it until you brought this up to me. Throughout the day, I was sitting there thinking about it, and I was like, non-magic users do kind of get the short end of the stick a little bit. I mean, you figure it at the beginning of the game, right? Your non-magic users are probably your heavy-hitting fighters and all that other stuff, right? Well, usually they kind of overshadow what we like to call glass cannons when it comes to magic users, because usually they have about half as many hit points and their ACs are about as good as their hit points. So, I mean, all of that being said, it can be a little stressful at the beginning, and especially as a magic user, I think you can be kind of overwhelmed with all the choices that you get, because usually you'll start off with 4 or 5 different powers that you got to keep straight between your cantrips and your level 1s and all that jazz. So it's pretty easy to be a non-magic user in the beginning because you go, I hit him with a stick. Oh, I'm going to hit him with the other part of the stick.
Yep.
I'm going to headbutt him.
Early on, the spells that the magic wielders have, yes, they have some that are fun outside of combat, but they really unlock some crazy, zany stuff as they level up, and they'll fall into kind of their niche of what spells they like to bust out. So earlier on, I think for non-magic wielders, being like able to lift the log that blocks your way, or something comes down to dexterity, it's probably going to fall on the rogue of the group. Whereas later, when they have to unlock a door, the wizard has knock now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
So how do you then, when we reach that threshold, how do we then get it so the non-magic wielders still feel engaged and don't feel like, it's not combat, I can sit back?
I think there's honestly a few different ways you can go about it, and we'll get into each one of these here in a minute. But I think the biggest thing is when, as the DM, you're trying to make everybody feel kind of like they have their own little niche or their own little thing that they do well, right?
Yep.
So usually as a non-magic wielder, you kind of default to the meat shield / bodyguard or defender, as some of the older editions would call it. You have your different archetypes. You have defender, healer, mage, and specialty, I think is what they used to call it.
Mm-hmm.
But those were kind of the 4 types. And then defender obviously is kind of your big heavy hitter, big guy in heavy armor, however you want to roleplay that. But I think there's a few different things that you can do. Honestly, I think some of it has to do with the character build. I think part of it has to do with the character backstory and the integration of both of those thereof.
Right. Well, let's first roll back a little bit here. I think we're kind of dancing around a question that I kind of want to ask so that we can debunk it.
Okay. But
that's my agenda for asking this question. And again, you can disagree with me, and I'll tell you that you're wrong, and we'll move on. But are magic wielding characters more fun than non-magic wielding characters?
I say yes and no, but I think it really depends on the player. Okay. So personally, my first character was a paladin. So I kind of had a mix of both magic and non-magic.
Mm-hmm.
Me as a new player, I relied more on the non-magic side of things because I didn't have to wrap my brain into a knot and try and figure it all out.
Right.
Now, granted, that was also in Pathfinder where everything was twice as hard as it is in 5th edition. So you've got that going for you too, as far as like the way rules are written and stuff like that.
Fair.
But that being said, I mean, it was easier, especially as a new character. I hit you with a stick. It was A plus B equals C. It was that easy. As I got more into the role playing aspect and started branching out, I did find that there was more fun things to do with magic users because you like you said, you can create water, you can shoot missiles out of your hands, you can make a spectral weapon that slaps people in the face, because that's what it does. But there's something, I don't know if I want to use the word carnal or natural about. So it's almost like an ecosystem of like fighters. Like for non-magic people, it's the survival of the fittest, right? If I can beat my way out of this, or if I can hack and slash to get through this fight, or not die or not get eaten, or whatever the case is, there's kind of a purity to that in that sense.
So then, let me ask this then. It seems like you're saying magic wielders, they feel like they have more to do. So does the introduction of legendary items offset that? If you give your fighter something like the Sunblade, or something allows them to walk on water, or boots that make them fall slower, so they effectively have feather fall, does that offset it? And now are they more fun because they have the legendary items?
Oh, sure, absolutely. I think especially with your non-magic users, it does help to give them maybe some of the slightly better magic items to an extent, because that's kind of how they're going to be able to hit people harder, or shoot people better, or do what they do better. Whereas you figure with like a wizard, they can read any book that they want to, learn a spell, and be able to cast that spell.
Right, but wizards aren't going to get so they can cast 3 spells in a round of combat, whereas my fighter is going to get to hit you that many times.
That's true. Or like we were saying earlier, once they get to higher level, they can cast something like Meteor Swarm.
That's fair.
And for those of you who have read Meteor Swarm, that does a boatload of damage.
Yep.
And very, very quickly can annihilate a ton of people. So it kind of does balance out, I think, because like I said earlier on, you get like Magic Missile where you do like 3d4 worth of damage, right?
Yep.
Whereas you get to Meteor Swarm and you end up doing like 40d6 worth of damage, which now then again, that's a level 9 spell.
Right.
But still, you're doing a potential of 240 points of damage and that's assuming that you maxed everything out.
Right.
But still, that's a lot of damage.
Yep.
So it might even take a fighter, you figure. Let's just say the fighter, for the sake of argument, has a great axe, which is a D12 weapon, and he has a +5 strength, right?
Right.
So at maximum in a round, even if he has all 5 hits and he lands all 5 hits, and I mean he's only going to be doing about 100 points of damage in a round. So I think it does offset a little bit, because you do get some of those power heavy spells for a magic user, even though your non-magic user people do get more attacks per round technically.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it does kind of offset in that respect.
Right. I think also though, making them feel more fun, like really for those magic wielders, they're going to be really good at whatever their magic based stat is. So if it's intelligence or wisdom, depending on the type of magic wielder we're dealing with. Mm-hmm. And then they're typically going to be decent at charisma, because you should be. Not charisma, sorry. Constitution, because you should be.
Well, you would hope.
Yeah, because the Constitution saving throws are going to get you. And then you're normally good at one other thing, and then they're going to be trash in the other areas. Whereas your fighters tend to round it out eventually. Yes, they're like, if you're a true fighter, it's going to be that strength is going to be your number 1, followed by Constitution. Then you're probably going to have decent dex.
Usually wisdom.
Yeah,
because depending on
saving throws.
On the saving throws. Yeah, usually wisdom.
Yeah, but you're still not going to leave your dex in the bad range unless you absolutely have to. You're truly terrible at your rolls at the beginning, and that's the way you did your character. But then if you're a rogue, you're going to have outstanding dexterity. You'll probably let that strength drop off. But those skills, I think we as DMs, we can use those to help the non-magic wielders still feel relevant and important outside of combat. The ability to blow through a door, like the wizards, yes, as they level up, you get more and more spell slots. It's still not something that, as players, you're just going to be cast that spell, cast that spell, cast that spell. And the cantrips, they can be situational, but they're not always going to be able to cover not having that skill.
Agreed.
And I think that's a duty for us as the dungeon masters to make sure that those skills do feel special and meaningful outside of combat. And sometimes it's about getting your magic users to be tight on those spell slots. So now they are having to rely on the non-magic wielders to get them through this situation so that they can still have spell slots come combat.
Mm-hmm. And I think some of that too, kind of going back to what you were saying earlier with the modifiers. Part of that really depends on your backstory and what you want your character to really do. Like if you want them to really specialize in melee combat, yeah, they'll have a good strength, but maybe their dexterity was a part of training camp that they didn't necessarily do as good. They were okay at it, but they weren't great. So I mean, you can kind of justify it backstory wise that way.
Mm-hmm.
To your point, I think with the magic users and stuff like that, I think the biggest thing to keep in mind is I can always hack somebody with a sword or a stick or a great axe. With magic user, it's kind of a once and done or twice and done kind of thing, depending on the spell, because you only have certain number of those spell slots.
Yep.
So it's one of those things where if once you get through kind of the initial hit of the wizard or the sorcerer or something like that, then they're kind of relegated to having to use the bodyguard as their protection, because then most of those classes, I think the biggest thing that they get proficiency for might be a dagger, maybe a short sword, so maybe
right.
a D6. So it's one of those things. Yeah. The other thing too is like when you get into warlocks, right? Warlocks have like 2 spell slots, but they're usually like I think if I remember right, you can cast the whatever the spell is at a really high level, even though you only get 2 per day. You get a bunch of cantrips, but you only get like 2 spell slots.
Yep.
So you really have to be careful as a warlock when you're playing those to not just burn them all the way at the beginning. Go, oh no, now I have the rest of the fight to not die.
Yep, and that's kind of harking back to the joke you once told me when I said I wanted to play a wizard who was afraid to cast spells, and you said, so I wanted to play a warlock. You're right on.
Well, I joke about that because I actually have a warlock in my party, and we tease her all the time because literally every time they cast a spell, it's Eldritch Blast. It's always a cantrip, and I think there was one time where they were in a bad pressure spot where like I forced her through her patron to make her like cast one of her like spell slots, and it was a good spell. I don't even remember what it was, but we always joke, she's like, I'm gonna cast my favorite. We're like, Eldritch Blast, Eldritch Blast, gonna couch that Eldritch Blast. And so we're like, I wonder what she's gonna cast. I bet you it's gonna be Eldritch Blast. We just kind of mess with her a little bit in that respect. But yeah, it's one of those things where if you only get 2, you got to be careful.
So I guess now I want to hit you with another question, Shea. And this is kind of there you go. Kind of around to like maybe why it feels this way, that the magic wielders seem more tempting to play, and maybe gets our creative juices going a little bit. Is it because non-magic wielding characters are too realistic for an RPG of this kind? I
mean, I can see that. Because we think non-magic users, that's basically us in real life, right? We as humans, now, I would love to be able to cast spells and have muscles and stuff like that, but I have no magic. Unfortunately, I cannot cast Wall of Force.
I have the magic in me. Every time I touch that dice, I roll nat 20s. magic behind my DM screen.
Whoever owns that song, please don't sue us.
Right? Good night, everybody. It's been fun. 11. That's how far it took us. All right. So
now hold on a second. If you actually roll like that, why don't you actually roll like that in a game?
Touché, sir.
No, there's only one of me. That you're only getting one of me.
So I just got what that meant. Touche. That took me a minute. Not gonna lie.
Listeners, you got that one right.
I hope they got it faster than I did. Please say you got that faster than I did, listeners. All right, so we're saying that non-magic wielders too realistic. I don't know. I don't walk around with a great axe on me back, and I definitely do not punch doors off their hinges on occasion.
I mean, I don't usually either, but when I do, I'm usually probably at a Renfest somewhere. I mean, everyday life, probably not so much. At a Renfest, probably.
I think I want to come at this way.
Okay.
The fighters or the monks or the rogues, think of yourself as like the Batman or Iron Man or Robin, like your non-powered superheroes, but of the party. So yeah, you don't have spells. You're not going to cast a lightning bolt. You're not going to fly unless it's on your way to the ground. And so you don't have those, but you have other things that can make your character strong and powerful and unique. And what makes those heroes great is they're creative on how they use their gifts. So I think it's a challenge to our players, but also to us as the DMs to encourage that. So how do we encourage that gameplay? I think that's how we should come at this, because we don't want to downplay our magic wielders.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
We want them to keep having fun. We want to reward their crazy lightning and their ability to hide the party from the Goblin Watch party and ambush them instead of get ambushed. We want to celebrate that. But how do we also celebrate the fighters or the monks or the rogues, their gifts, and make sure that we're bringing that out of our players?
So I guess I will add this caveat now that I just thought about this. We are talking about non-magic users, and we're talking about like barbarians and paladins and fighters and stuff like. We should also have the caveat that there are some sub-archetypes of fighters that can cast magic, like your Eldritch Knights. You do have, I think it's the Zealot barbarian can cast some spells. You have like your Arcane Trickster for rogues that can do that. So we're specifically more talking about the assassins. We're talking about the champion fighters, the assassin rogues. We're talking about the berserker type barbarians. We're talking about these guys that really do not have the magic portion of this game. Okay. Like obviously, yes, you can kind of do a hybrid with an Eldritch Knight fighter where you can cast some spells, or an Arcane Trickster, which you can do some spells. So let's just put that caveat in here as well. Right.
And you could always multi-class, but we're talking specifically for those that they don't want to deal with the complexity of the multi-class, or they just didn't envision their character having magic powers. That is 100% valid, and it can be 100% just as fun. And I think we, as the DMs, we need to make sure that we're including them inside and outside of combat. I think a lot of it is our attitude towards the game. If we treat it as, oh yes, fighter, go ahead and roll your third attack, then it's not going to feel as fun to them, because we just made one of the best parts of their character not fun, because we just downplayed it.
Our connotation of, okay, roll your 30th attack this round. It's probably going to do that.
But then I think also for me, I keep bringing up combat because I've been that's me, myself, outside this podcast. I've been working on making my combats more fun. I felt like I fell into a rut with combats, so I've been working really hard on that. I want to come, I think in combat is where these characters shine. Excuse me, they have the extra attacks, they deal higher damage, especially earlier on. They have unique stuff, sneak attack for rogues, monks with the parry stuff, and they're awesome. Barbarians with the hit me, and it's really that's awesome. Paladins with the you can't hit me mindset. I have a cleric who's that way in my campaign off and on, parting his beard, and I can't hit it. That sounded really weird, out of context.
We should probably put context with that. So
sometime we will. Keep tuning back in. But
kids, plug your ears.
Outside of combat, I feel like when it's the roleplay heavy moments, then your class really doesn't matter as much. It might shape how you approach the situation, but we're not rolling the dice. I'm talking more about, okay, we are in this situation. There's no monster. like we have to get down this cliffside, or we have to unlock this door, or we have to solve this puzzle. Wizards have this tool set that they're suddenly relying on. They're casting Featherfall, they're casting Knock, they're lighting up the room for those that don't have dark vision. Like they were doing all this stuff. How do you give our non-magic wielders something to do in that moment beyond what everybody else at the table's doing and just focusing on whatever that situation is, or taking the backseat because they're like, they got magic, they'll do this.
Or, so my favorite character to play, and just follow me for a second.
Following.
So my favorite character to play is the Berserker Barbarian. For me, it's just there's just something fun about that character that's just always fun. Anyway, where I was going with this, so like let's take for example, like if you're in a cave, right, and you walk up to this ledge and there's a crevice down that goes like 30 feet, right, but there's a ledge that you can kind of like get to where you want to go. If as a DM you had an anti-magic field,
ooh,
you could force your players to reach into their dungeoneering pack and grab the 50 foot of hemp rope that nobody remembers from character creation.
Yep.
And say, okay, you big strong fighter, you lower us down so we can get down to this point, and then he would have to tie himself off to the wall, basically rappel himself down to get to wherever you're going, and then you can keep going. And I know that's going to hamper your magic people, but at the same time, you're giving specific instances to let your non-magic people kind of take center stage. Sometimes if you have a gelatinous cube monster, magic, I don't know how well magic works with gelatinous cubes, but I know if you hack and slash it, sometimes you can cut it to pieces.
Just run whenever as a player and there's a gelatinous cube, I'm like, get out.
That's probably the safer place.
Yeah, I just don't want to end instantly there.
You don't want to look like Han Solo in the wall going.
No, not particularly.
But I think honestly, like you were saying in Batman, right? Let's just take your Batman example. Batman, he's a great fighter. He's a very good monk rogue type hybrid, right? But Batman is also a very intelligent person, right? Bruce Wayne is a very intelligent person. So like he's kind of he's probably a tri-multi-class. He's kind of like an artificer, a rogue, and a monk all at the same time.
Yeah.
But you figure, he's got his Batcave where he does all of his research. He does all of this is what they have been doing. Like he looks for patterns of like enemies that they're doing this, and this, so he can kind of stay like 2 steps ahead of them.
The world's greatest detective.
It's okay to have smart fighters. It's okay to have smart barbarians. Okay.
What?
Don't think that if you play a non-magic person, you have to play stupid.
Exactly.
Okay? It is kind of a stereotype, but you don't have to play your character that way. And sometimes having like a fighter who was a high level ranking military person that was in a strategic war room could play well if you're talking in diplomatic negotiations, especially to a king and queen for war tactics.
Yep. And that's something that I really commend my party for IRL. I have 2 fighters who are completely non-magic. And one of them, he is, to save having to go into the very convoluted political setup that he built into his backstory for the nation he's from, because I gave him a lot of free reign there. He built a really cool system. I really should share it sometime. But he's effectively a prince.
It's awesome.
Oh yeah, it's really cool. Sometime. But he's effectively a prince, and because of that, he has a very good understanding of how politics work, and he actually has a great understanding of decorum. He also has a great character flaw that he role plays into his character, where he doesn't always think before he speaks, and I think part of that becomes from the fact that his character didn't have to, where he came from. Being blunt in his culture is praised. So sometimes now, when the party's no longer in his homeland and they're out traveling around and he says the blunt thing, it gets him in trouble. But then he also normally knows how to navigate it as well. And he'll wield it and he gets the results he wants a lot. because of doing that. And then the other fighter, he was a captain of the guard in the military. He takes charge in moments. He keeps a really cool level head when the others are panicked, and he role plays that quite well. So
yes.
Like that's something I commend them for big time. And if you guys do listen to this is definitely not me asking for our party. This is actually a question that I thought of out of having a lot of conversations with just a bunch of other D&D players from other groups, and then also listening to some podcasts. And it's kind of something I caught up on, was just like noticing, hey, people are saying that non-magic wielders aren't having as much fun. And so I was like, ooh, that's on us. That's a DM problem. So I wanted to bring that up here.
Yeah, I would totally agree with it. And like we had mentioned too, I think the better you can always weave a character build and their backstory into a story, the more you can get their niche to really shine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, so one of my players, I'm gonna pick on my barbarian for a second. We had this fight underground, and I think I talked about this here a while back, where he hit some guy, killed the guy, but the guy's body got hit and got caught on his axe, and he got flung up against the wall. Well, the mask he was wearing hit the floor, and while he was raging, he saw the mask, and it immediately tripped him into when he was back home when his village was killed. He remembered seeing that mask on the ground in his village.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a tie right there that I know he's got something to chew on whenever they get to that point. But it's one of those things where, like, if you can tie stuff like that in, like put little chicken nuggets in there for them to feed on and chew on for a little bit, and then after a while they go, oh, okay. Well, if our players, let's say our group just finishes a big fight and we have some downtime, the fighter can come up and say, hey, so I remember seeing this thing in this cave. Do you think we can explore this further? So at that point, the non-magic user can now take charge and take point and say, hey, what do you guys think about, following me through this adventure over here?
Yep.
That goes, it kind of gives, like, and this goes for magic users and non-magic users alike, but the more you tie their story into your story, I think the more traction you're going to get from that character, whether they use magic or not.
I think that's 100% the key to D&D being successful.
Absolutely.
And a party having a long campaign is not always just backstories, but especially early on with the backstories. That's the most recent thing that they've worked hard on. Later, with the new organic character draws that you've built over time from leaning into the backstories, maybe the new rival that they have, or maybe there is this gang that they have foiled multiple times that has now tripled their forces to foil them back. And so that's a running thread that's not core to your campaign. Or maybe there's this item that was precious to them, they lost it, now they're out to get it again, or that's what they're questing after the whole time. You keep teasing with them, they have that draw that they're going to keep grabbing onto and keep re-engaging for. And also, I think it's 100% okay as a DM, if this is the way your party is, to have your running jokes. That they maybe not every session, but enough that it can stay a running theme. Like we were saying, parting the beard for our cleric. We've talked about in the past, we mess up intentionally now one of the characters' names because in our first session I could not get it right, and that was legitimate then. It's not legitimate now.
So really, that's us picking on the DM, but we're using the guy to pick on the DM for us.
Yep. Kind of almost turning it, because now he's like, come on guys, what's my character's name?
But hey, another thing we could do too, you touched on a little bit ago, like magic items for non-magic users. So I remember hearing about one magic item where a fighter had a pair of boots, and if he got knocked down, he could choose where he landed.
Ooh.
So if he's like directly in front of somebody and all of a sudden they hit him, he could literally fall forward or fall to the side, even though
physics
physics do not matter at this point. Like, yeah, he could land he could basically fall where he was. He could fall to the left, to the right, whatever. Like, I remember I had an axe that my brother-in-law, when he was running the game, played, and I think it was called a bloodthirsty axe.
Yep.
Where if it was the killing blow on an enemy, it was stuck in the body until the start of the next round. And what it would do is it would suck all the blood out of the target, so they were dead, and then it would move on to the next one.
It didn't it also like give you the desire to hit it like rewarded you too, didn't it?
Not really. This one was just more specifically. It would do that if you did score critical. Speaking of fun magic items, we had one. Now, granted, the guy was playing a mage, but it was just the item was funny. It was actually a sword that would talk to him.
Ooh.
It was an enchanted sword, and it actually would drink beer. Like you could put it in a keg of beer, and it would actually drink the keg. But it was kind of a historian's type sword. It was kind of weird.
That's what you want, a drunk historian.
Exactly right. I mean, how else did you get Monty Python and the Holy Grail?
Exactly. That's 100% accurate. That really happened.
Love that movie, by the way. But all of that to say, like, I know I haven't touched on this yet, but like party splits, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's fun to split the non-magic users and the magic users up, and if they get going somewhere and they get caught into a situation like, oh no, how am I going to get myself out of this? And like, God, I wish I had a magic guy with me, or vice versa. You put the magic-y guys in a crate that they get stuck in. Like, man, I could really use a big strong guy right now.
Yeah, somebody who could lift this or
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I think splitting up the party like that, it does make things feel fresh because we fall into habits, we fall into our roles. We do this in real life and we don't even think about it. Like, just pay attention the next time you're at work or you're around a group of people. You'll fall into kind of doing your things. There's the person that at work they always refill the napkin jar over at the break table, or they're always there when you walk in the morning. You say hello to them. The one day that they're not, you're like, oh no,
yeah,
something's off now. I didn't say hello. Like, my whole day feels off. And take that times 100 because now you're in this role play situation. You're so used to, oh, we're in a dark cave. I don't have dark vision, but no worries. My buddy, the wizard over here, he'll cast light.
Hey, wizard, turn on the light. Oh wait, they're not with me. Dadgummit.
I'm all alone. There's nobody here beside. So now we have this. And you don't have Shea and I to play your bards, and so you have to sing your own songs.
For the low price of your sanity, we will come and bardic inspiration your team. Please send all souls to dungeonmastertalk@gmail.com.
As a ginger, I'm not that hungry, but I had to. Now, I do have to warn everybody, if you're trying to take me up on that offer, I play a bard who is a jerk. He is self-fulfilling. I play a very self-focused bard.
For those of you who don't know, I play a gnome bard barbarian, so if you insult him, he might go TPK on your party. So, but anyway.
It's okay. He's short. You by default have the high ground.
Oh, you take the high road. Anyway.
So, yeah, party splits are a great way to capitalize on making characters in any situation, even if your characters seem like they're having fun anyway. It gets the players to reach into their bag of tricks a bit more. They might have to look into, oh, what do I actually have in my traveler's bag? Mm-hmm. What abilities do I have for my character that I never use because I always have so-and-so to do it for me?
Yeah.
I think party splits are a whole lot of fun, which is why my party is currently split in my campaign right now. And that's the way, I like it.
But, I mean, technically, you have broken the cardinal sin of D&D 3 times.
Well, I did send one off by himself, yes.
You did. So you split the party, and then you split that same party again into 3 pieces. Yep. That's okay. We'll forget.
It's been good.
It really has. Died. It really has. It really has. I have no complaints about it. I'm just giving you a hard time because you broke the cardinal D&D rule.
Hey, one of you had a choice to make. The rest of you, my bad. I thought it would be funny. That's honestly why.
In all seriousness, no, I think it's absolutely hilarious. It's just funny.
Yeah, so guys, we danced around it all night, and sometimes we didn't really dance around it very good. We plowed right into it, but I think lastly we do have to mention that with these characters, fun combat really can make their character feel rewarding. So I really do just want to end this by saying, make sure to reward things like creative combat ideas. If somebody uses the terrain to their advantage to get a jumping strike, go ahead and give them a bonus or an advantage or a little extra damage. allow them to mix up situations, reward them for taking cover, do fun things like that. And then if they roleplay their combat correctly, so say they are supposed to be the tank and it's the first time really taking that role, they've struggled with it, but now they're actually getting it and they're falling into it, you can always reward with inspiration, stuff like that. It seems small, but it actually does go a long way to making a character feel fulfilling.
Well, hey guys, thank you so much for joining us this week. We really enjoy everybody that decides to download this podcast. If you would just do us a favor and subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already, if you would leave us a review, that would help us to grow the DMT community and really put this podcast a little bit higher in the ratings so that we can have more people join this discussion with you and with us. So you can always get in contact with us at dungeonmastertalk@gmail.com. You can hit us on Twitter at DMT the podcast, or you can find us on Facebook at Dungeon Master Talk podcast page. Again, we just thank you so much for being with us. And as always, I am Shea, he is Kyle, and we will see you next time on Dungeon Master Talk.